A hit song can bring a musician both fame and fortune, but fame is fickle, and fortunes soon run out. Not convinced? Just ask these 80s superstars. Cyndi Lauper enjoyed a huge amount of success in the 80s, with 5 of her singles breaking the top 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, including 2 that made it to number 1. At the time, though, most people didn't know that Lauper had already been forced to file for bankruptcy before her career took off. Lauper had once been the lead singer of the group Blue Angel. They released one album.
What was the band you were in before?
Blue Angel.
What happened to them?
Oh, went lead. Some bands go gold, mine went lead.
Their manager then dragged the band to court, suing them for $80,000 and control of the group's music rights. With zero career success at that point and no money to hand, Lauper was forced to file for bankruptcy. Fortunately, things soon began to go her way. The judge in the case not only decided in her favor, but actually exclaimed, "Let the canaries sing." That line from a terrible time in her life stuck with her, and it later became the title of a 2023 documentary about her career. Once she was free of her legal bills, Lauper was able to start making music again. She soon hit it big with her iconic song, Girls Just Wanna Have Fun. Loaf released his smash hit album Bad Outta Hell in 1977, and rode that wave of success all the way into the next decade. But the 80s weren't as lucrative for the singer, with just 2 albums and 1 single charting over the course of the decade. The fortune he'd made from his earlier success was quickly consumed by court battles with his ex-manager and his label, and before long, Loaf had pretty much nothing to his name. Speaking about this period of his life, he later told the Los Angeles Times, "I ended up bankrupt. I lost my house and everything, even the publishing rights to my songs, which the bankruptcy court took away. But I'm not the first artist who has ever been screwed. It happens all the time." Although there was no foolproof way of measuring album sales at the time, Loaf began to suspect that his label was undercounting sales of Bad Outta Hell to avoid paying him the royalties he was owed. He recalled, "They didn't mind making a ton of money on my album. Is it too much to ask for them to pay what they owe me?" Loaf was still in court when the 90s rolled around, desperately trying to get a hold of the royalties he believed he was owed. As he told The Guardian, "There's not an artist alive or will ever be alive that has ever been paid what they are owed. You just need to know that going in. If you sign with a record label, be prepared. You won't get all your money. It's not going to happen." Loaf said that he finally received his full royalties for Bad Outta Hell in 1997, a full 20 years after it was released. Billy Joel's music has charted regularly from the 70s, but the 80s saw him find more success than ever before.
Your responsibilities grow, but I'm pretty much the same, I think.
Despite this, it was also the decade when Joel found out he'd lost all his money due to financial mismanagement by his former manager and former brother-in-law, Frank Weber. Joel later told the New York Times Magazine that it was misplaced pride that kept him from tracking his finances. He said, "I always had this sense that, okay, I'm an artist and I shouldn't have to be concerned about something as banal as money, which is baloney. I didn't pay any attention to it and I trusted other people, and I got screwed." An audit estimated Joel was out some $30 million. Despite this, having grown up poor, he knew that he still had a lot. He said, "I never went without a meal. I just didn't have the money I was supposed to have. There was a rumor that I filed for bankruptcy. That never happened either. I owed Uncle Sam a couple of $1,000,000 in income tax, and the money that I thought was there wasn't there." Joel took his former manager to court, suing him for $90 million, but he only scraped back about $8 million after Weber filed for bankruptcy protection. You'd be forgiven for thinking that Michael Jackson should have been rolling in cash. After all, 1982 saw him release Thriller, the best-selling album of all time. Yet at the time of his death in 2009, the king of pop was in a staggering amount of debt. Testifying at the wrongful death trial brought by the Jackson estate against his former doctor in 2013, Jackson's former accountant revealed more about the state of his finances. While Jackson spent huge amounts on jewelry and the upkeep of his Neverland ranch, interest expense was by far the biggest drain on his fortune. A few years later, a court filing would state that Jackson had been drowning under debt and creditors' claims. Some of the debt was in default, and much of it was accruing massive amounts of interest. The total amount Jackson owed came to an estimated sum of $500 million. His death only added to that debt too, as his estate was forced to pay $40 million to the promoter of the tour that never was. Run-D.M.C scored a string of firsts in the 80s. They released the first ever platinum hip-hop album, for example, and were the first rappers to appear on the cover of Rolling Stone.
They put Rockbox on as the first, one of the first, maybe African-American groups on MTV.
So it came as quite the surprise when they filed for bankruptcy in 1993. The group had taken their label to court over royalty and contract disputes in 1988. While the label claimed Run-D.M.C only filed for bankruptcy in an attempt to get out of their contract, the group themselves insisted that they really were flat broke. Either way, they did manage to get a better contract out of their supposed legal gambit, but going to court caused them to lose even more money in the long run. Run-D.M.C came to an end after Jam Master Jay was killed in 2002. After his death, it turned out that his finances still weren't in great shape. At the time, Joseph Run Simmons told Rolling Stone, "We're not going to discuss his personal finances in detail, but as a family, we're going to make sure there is no debt. We're not going to let his widow, Terry, go through any insecurity." John Oates was one half of the rock duo Hall & Oates, who scored an impressive 5 #1 songs in the 80s. And yet, one day in 1987, his accountant sprung some surprising news on him. He was flat broke. Oates proceeded to have a panic attack that was so bad he thought he was having a heart attack. In his autobiography, he explained how this financial disaster happened, writing, "Daryl and I were always isolated from all that. In a sense, the situation was not dissimilar to that of a dysfunctional family. We were the kids, encouraged to enjoy the wild, crazy, protracted adolescence life of a rock star. Let Daddy take care of the important stuff." Oates made it quite clear that Daddy, the people in charge of their finances and careers, didn't steal their money, but he did blame them for not preparing the duo for the harsh realities of fame. Oates continued, "I just wish they'd warned us that the high life we were living would have financial consequences. We weren't cheated, we were seduced." As the frontman of Twisted Sister, Dee Snider saw some considerable success in the 80s. The band released 6 albums that made it onto the Billboard 200 charts, and 3 singles cracked the Billboard Hot 100, including the rock anthem We're Not Gonna Take It, which reached number 21. But after Twisted Sister broke up, Snider lost all his money, twice. Having dealt with the financial mess he found himself in as a result of Twisted Sister's breakup, Snider formed another band called Desperado. This didn't exactly go well, though. He later told Ultimate Classic Rock, "All the while, my financial situation, which had been cleared up less than a year earlier, was quickly eroding. I'd been supporting the rest of Desperado and all the ancillary expenses since the end of 1987. As we prepared to head into the studio to record almost 2 years later, I was already back in debt. The huge advance for the first album wasn't enough to save me." When Desperado split up after just one album, Snider did what he could to get back on his feet. As he told Fox News Digital, "Double bankruptcy, my career collapsed. I was riding a bicycle to a desk job, answering phones. I was married, had 3 kids. Things just went incredibly south."
People come in, and is that Dee Snider on the phone? This is 1991, 92.
Chaka Khan has done well for herself over the years, not least by staying on top of what's happening with her money. She told Jet in 1985, "I keep in touch with my accountant. I speak to my manager daily. You have to have a certain business sense." Yet Khan has also found herself in court on a number of occasions. When she tried to free herself from a contract with Curtis Mayfield's record label in the 70s, he sued her for some of the profits she'd made at another label. When she called him to ask what he was doing, Mayfield asked Khan if she'd ever been sued before. She said no, and he replied, "Well, hang in there. You'll be sued a lot. It's cold out there." Khan has also lost many of these lawsuits, forcing her to pay millions in lawyers' costs and settlement fees. These included a suit from her landlord claiming she kept a dog in her home against the terms of release, one from a production company who sued her for $5,000 she owed them after a concert in Hawaii, and most tragically, the $1.3 million she was ordered to pay in a wrongful death lawsuit when her son shot and killed his friend in her home. Toya Jackson was never destined to be as famous as several of her siblings, but she still gave it a pretty good try.
I'd like to be a multifaceted performer, go into musicals, feature films.
She released her debut solo album in 1980 and another 5 albums before the decade was out. These barely made a dent in the charts, however, and her biggest success was supplying background vocals on her brother's album Thriller. Despite this lackluster chart history, her name was still Jackson, and promoters knew that this would bring in the crowds. So in 1992, Toya was hired for a 6-month residency at the Moulin Rouge in Paris. The venue's artistic director Jean-Miguel told the New York Times, "People tend to think of us as old-fashioned. That is why you have to try experiments like Toya Jackson. You have to try to innovate." But the press was unimpressed with her show, despite Toya's manager seeding rumors that her brother was going to come see her perform any day now. Then Toya bailed on the gig altogether. According to Francois Chateau, one of the Moulin Rouge's lawyers, she stopped performing after a few days after an investment of more than $1 million. The Moulin Rouge sued Toya for walking out on them, and facing a $550,000 judgment from the courts, she filed for bankruptcy protection in 1995. Toya claimed that she was unable to pay the judgment, though, because she had less than $50,000 in assets at the time. Natalie Cole was most famous for being the daughter of Nat King Cole, but she also had real talent in her own right. After first finding success in the 70s, Cole landed 8 songs on the Billboard Hot 100 in the 80s, peaking at number 5 with Pink Cadillac. During this time, though, Cole was deeply unwell. Due to ongoing drug use, her mother went to court to have her placed under a conservatorship. Aside from protecting the family's pride and helping her to get clean, the conservatorship also helped to protect Cole's finances. She said, "I wasn't a vegetable by any means, but I just wasn't able to take care of things in the way that they should have been. I was negligent about a lot of things. I was spending totally too much money." Cole got clean after 2 stints in rehab, and she continued to make music until her death in 2015. If you or anyone you know needs help with addiction issues, help is available. Visit the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration website or contact SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP 4357.